Hi, it's Lisa, and this is the final video looking at the Move tool in depth. In this video, I'll be filming on a Mac instead of my usual Windows machine. The shortcuts are similar on the Mac and Windows, but you usually need to swap the Command key for the Control key. If you're on a Windows machine and see the Command key, hit the Control key instead. A useful part of the Move tool, especially when you're designing a layout of something, is the alignment section of options. There are actually 12 different buttons here in the options bar that you can use to align objects. These options are not active, however, until you have at least 2 layers or groups selected. I'll select all of my circle layers, and you can see that the 12 buttons are now all available. I can align things based on the top, vertical center, or the bottom edge. When I choose top or bottom, it lines up that edge of each circle. Or if I choose vertical center, it aligns all the circles on their vertical centers. Saying vertical centers might be confusing when I'm talking about a circle, but what it means in this case is that the circles will have their centers all lined up along a horizontal line. Then, as you might guess from looking at the icons, these next 3 buttons will align the circles based on left or right edges. Notice how they line up to the edge that is furthest on the side you're aligning to. If I align the horizontal centers now, the circles are all perfectly centered on top of each other. So if I go back to the original layout, this is aligning vertical centers, and this is aligning horizontal centers. If you want everything centered completely, you click on both buttons. If I want this entire grouping to be centered perfectly on the page, I can just select the group and the background layer. Then I align the vertical centers and the horizontal centers. So it's a common pattern I use to select my objects and then click both of the center buttons. Let's hide the circles and look at the squares to see how you can distribute objects evenly. If I move 4 of these squares to the left, I can demonstrate how to distribute the squares. If I click on Distribute Horizontal Centers, you can see that it has evenly distributed the squares horizontally. Distributing them on vertical centers doesn't make much sense in this case, but you might want to line up the top edge or the bottom edge to get all these squares in a perfect line. These options are really useful if you're trying to design some sort of navigation menu and want all the boxes to be evenly distributed. If I really mess up the alignment of these boxes, I can still get them aligned very quickly. I just distribute the horizontal centers, then align them vertically using one of these buttons. Again, I can center this entire thing against the background. It's important to remember to select the group and not the layers individually. If I select all the layers when I click on the center distribution button, they'll all be on top of each other. But if I select the group and the background layer, it centers the entire group on the background. If you've watched all the movies on the Move tool, that's a pretty exhaustive look at how it works. I'm not going to discuss the 3D options right here, which you might not even see if you have an earlier version of Photoshop and don't have the extended version. The very final thing I want to remind you of is that the Move tool is one of those tools you'll want to grab quickly and use often. Of course, you can use the toolbar or hit the V key to get to it quickly. But you can also hold the Control or Command key down to access the Move tool temporarily. While holding the key down, you can move something, but when you let go of the key, you go back to your previous tool. This is a very handy shortcut to remember and one I use often.